ANDOR Season 1 came out nearly 3 years ago, but I am reviewing it anyway in the very first episode of Too Late Reviews, where I briefly share my thoughts on stuff that came out not very recently. It's a new series I've thought of, and maybe people will like it, or maybe people will think that it's stupid and corny, but that's okay too. If you clicked on this video expecting it to be about Season 2, I am sorry to disappoint, but I am working on a video for that, so stay tuned. You should still watch this video though, because I know you can't wait to hear what I have to say about Andor's first season. For context, I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, and even though I really like the first 6 movies, I haven't watched all the shows and kept up with all the lore and everything. But Rogue One was naturally one of my favorite Star Wars movies, so I decided to finally give Andor a shot after hearing that the second and final season was coming out. Andor is definitely not as fast and action-packed as other Star Wars movies and shows, but that doesn't stop it from being a relatively great part of the franchise. And I say relatively because of how downhill Star Wars has gone since the sequels, which set the bar pretty low for Andor. Like I said, I haven't completely kept up with all the new stuff. We don't really need to see what's happened with the franchise. So anyway, like I said, the bar was set low, but Andor ends up being really good. The characters and dialogue are well written, especially for Star Wars. The writing itself is definitely better than I expected, and the more technical aspects like the VFX and direction are some of the best that I've seen in Star Wars. It's far from a perfect show though, and there were definitely moments in the story, or a lack of moments in the story, that ended up taking away from what could have been peak Star Wars. So yes, I'm saying that Andor is not peak Star Wars like some people might think. First though, I'll talk about what I really like about Andor. I think the best aspect of this show is how it manages all of its separate lines and characters, giving them all fairly interesting stories and leaving the audience wondering how everything's going to come together. I especially like what the show has done with Mon Mothma, who we see in more depth than ever in Andor. Seeing her and Luthen, who is easily one of the most well-written characters in Star Wars, essentially kickstart the rebellion and get it into the position of power that they had at the beginning of Rogue One, is my favorite part of the season. Towards the middle and end of the season, I think they actually overshadow Andor's story, but he's still given enough to do to justify the show being named after him. His first big story moment is on Aldhani, when he robs the Empire, and I loved this part of the show, and it is so well done, even to the point where it makes the rest of the season look a little underwhelming, honestly. Visuals, characters, story, pretty much everything about Aldhani is really good Star Wars. It's one of the first big victories for the growing rebellion, which is very satisfying to see, even if it doesn't actually end all that well for everybody involved. Enough about the good stuff though. There are a couple issues I have with Andor that don't ruin the show by any means, but do take away from its full potential and turn the show into well above average Star Wars, but not the masterpiece that some people think it is. The biggest issue I have is how the show spends so much time on things that either don't matter a whole lot or should be done much quicker. Andor is supposed to be a slower story, not as fast and exciting as the recent movies that need to keep the attention of all the kids these days, but that doesn't excuse the contrivances and the abundance of just insignificant moments in the story. My biggest complaint, which may be a surprise to most people, is Narkina 5. It's a completely contrived segment of the story that doesn't do much more than keep Andor busy for a good portion of the season. It can be pretty cool, I'll give it that, but it still just doesn't make that much sense. First of all, Andor himself doesn't do a whole lot and is kind of just along for the ride with the audience, and second of all, the prison break is pretty unrealistic and very convenient for the protagonists. If Andor had never got arrested, everything on Narkina 5 might have still played out the same, which is weird considering the show is supposed to be about him. I know a lot of people love Narkina 5 though, so I'll give it some credit by saying that everything other than the writing is great. It's just that writing is pretty important. Kino Loy is a really good character, his monologue was great, but I do think he was kind of underutilized. But enough about that. There was so much more I could say about Andor's first season, but like I said in the intro, I'm only briefly sharing my thoughts since this season is now years old, and right now everybody is much more focused on the new season, which I also have plenty to say about already. In conclusion, Andor's first season is Star Wars like we've never seen before, and even though it's overrated in my opinion, it is still a great show that finally gives the franchise the respect it deserves, even if the best part of the show isn't actually Andor himself. But let me know what you thought of the first season, and let me know if you want to keep seeing more Andor or just Star Wars content. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider dropping a like and a sub if you enjoyed, and until next time.